If love has ever made you feel anxious, trapped, or like you were slowly disappearing, your problem isn't fear of commitment. It's that at some point in your life, being close to someone stopped feeling safe. So now your nervous system does something brutal but logical. It chooses loneliness over love, not because you want it, but because it knows how to survive there. This video explains why. For some people, love does not feel like home. It feels like risk. Not because they don't want connection, but because their nervous system learned very early that closeness leads to pain, confusion, or loss of control. So while part of them longs for intimacy, another part quietly believes that being alone is safer. This inner conflict is not a personality trait. It is an adaptation. From a psychological perspective, especially through Jungian depth psychology, the unconscious does not seek happiness. It seeks safety. And safety is defined by what was familiar in childhood, not by what is healthy in adulthood. If you grew up in an environment where emotional closeness was unpredictable, inconsistent, or overwhelming, your system learned that love comes with danger. Not necessarily physical danger, but emotional instability. You learned that when you open up, something goes wrong. Maybe love meant walking on eggshells. Maybe it meant being responsible for someone else's emotions. Maybe it meant being disappointed when you needed support the most. As a child, you had no way to leave. You adapted. You learned to self-regulate alone. You learned to rely on yourself. You learned that needing too much creates tension. Over time, independence stopped being a choice and became a survival strategy. In adulthood, this shows up as a strange paradox. You may crave connection deeply, but when it actually becomes available, you feel uneasy. You feel irritated. You feel trapped. Or you feel the urge to pull away. You might tell yourself that you just enjoy your freedom. That relationships are distracting. That you work better alone. But underneath those explanations, there is often a deeper truth. Solitude feels safer because it feels predictable. When you are alone, no one can disappoint you. No one can leave unexpectedly. No one can demand parts of you that you learn to hide. Being alone gives you control over emotional exposure. In dating, this pattern often appears very subtly. You may be attracted to people who are emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, or distant. On the surface, it looks like chemistry. In reality, it allows you to engage without fully risking intimacy. As long as the other person cannot fully show up, you never have to fully open. When someone genuinely available enters your life, you may suddenly feel bored, overwhelmed, or uncomfortable. You may find reasons why it won't work. You may feel pressure you cannot explain. This is not intuition. It is conditioning. Your nervous system is reacting to unfamiliar safety. From a Jungian perspective, this is where the shadow becomes active. The part of you that learned to suppress needs, vulnerability, and dependence lives outside your conscious identity. You may consciously see yourself as strong, independent, and self-sufficient, while unconsciously fearing what would happen if you truly needed someone. Love threatens that identity. For many people, being alone does not actually feel good. It feels controlled. It feels contained. But control can feel like safety when chaos was once the norm. In long-term relationships, this pattern can create distance even when both people care deeply. You may feel overwhelmed by emotional closeness. You may need excessive space. You may shut down during conflict instead of engaging. Your partner may experience you as emotionally distant or unavailable, while you experience yourself as simply trying to breathe. Often, this dynamic comes from early experiences where emotional intensity was not regulated. If caregivers were emotionally volatile, intrusive, or inconsistent, closeness felt like losing yourself. So as an adult, you protect yourself by keeping emotional distance, even when you don't want to. Breakups can feel oddly relieving for people with this pattern. Painful, yes. But also familiar. After the loss, there is a sense of emotional quiet. A return to self-control. You may miss the person intensely, yet feel calmer once the relationship ends. This creates confusion. You may wonder whether you ever truly wanted connection at all. But the longing doesn't disappear. It goes inward. You may develop rich inner worlds. You may channel emotional energy into work, creativity, or self-development. These can be healthy outlets, but they can also become substitutes for relational risk. The unconscious belief remains: closeness costs too much. From a depth psychological view, healing does not mean forcing yourself into relationships or shaming yourself for needing space. It means understanding why space feels safer than love in the first place. It means recognizing that your nervous system learned this pattern to protect you, not to punish you. One of the most important shifts happens when you stop interpreting discomfort as danger. Emotional closeness may feel unfamiliar, activating, or destabilizing at first. That does not mean it is harmful. It means it is new. Many people wait for relationships to feel immediately calm and effortless, not realizing that calm is often confused with emotional numbness. Growth-oriented connection may feel activating because it touches parts of you that were once unsafe to express. This is especially true if your inner child learned that love was conditional. That you were valued when you were easy, quiet, or self-sufficient. In that case, needing reassurance, closeness, or support now may trigger shame. You may judge yourself for wanting more. You may minimize your needs. You may feel weak for desiring intimacy. So being alone feels simpler, cleaner, less emotionally risky. But simplicity is not the same as fulfillment. From a Jungian lens, individuation requires integrating the parts of yourself that were split off for survival. This includes the part that wants closeness, softness, and shared emotional space. Until that part is welcomed, solitude will continue to feel safer than love, even if it also feels lonely. Healing often begins not in relationships, but in awareness. Noticing when you pull away. Noticing when you intellectualize instead of feel. Noticing when independence becomes a shield rather than a choice. Slowly, you begin to differentiate between actual threat and emotional memory. You learn that closeness does not have to mean loss of self. That boundaries can coexist with intimacy. That needing someone does not make you powerless. As this integration happens, something subtle but profound shifts. Love no longer feels like an invasion. It feels like an invitation. Being alone remains valuable, but no longer necessary for survival. And for the first time, connection stops feeling like danger and starts feeling like possibility. In dating, this pattern often becomes visible very early, even before you consciously recognize it. You may feel excited about someone at first, but the moment they show consistent interest, something inside you tightens. You start noticing small flaws. You feel irritated by their messages. You suddenly need more space. It may feel like you are losing attraction, but what is often happening is that your nervous system is losing control. If you grew up in an environment where emotional closeness felt overwhelming or unpredictable, consistency can feel threatening. When someone is clearly interested, emotionally available, and present, your system has nowhere to hide. There is no ambiguity to protect you. So attraction fades not because the person is wrong, but because the situation is unfamiliar. At the same time, you may feel drawn to people who are inconsistent, distant, or emotionally confusing. The highs and lows feel intense. The longing feels meaningful. The waiting feels familiar. This is not because you enjoy suffering. It is because your system learned early that love requires vigilance. In these dynamics, you often feel alive when connection is uncertain. When the other person pulls away, your desire increases. When they move closer, your anxiety rises. This push-pull dynamic creates the illusion of chemistry. But it is not chemistry. It is recognition. Your inner child recognizes a familiar emotional environment and mistakes it for connection. In early dating stages, this can look like choosing people who are emotionally unavailable, already attached, or unsure about commitment. As long as the other person cannot fully show up, you are protected from having to fully show up yourself. You can desire without risking exposure. When a relationship does begin to deepen, the pattern often intensifies. You may feel an urge to slow things down, create distance, or regain control. You may suddenly prioritize work, hobbies, or personal space. You may tell yourself that you are just independent. But independence becomes avoidance when it is driven by fear. In long-term relationships, this pattern often shows up as emotional withdrawal during moments that require vulnerability. When your partner expresses strong emotions, needs reassurance, or wants deeper connection, you may shut down. Not because you don't care, but because closeness triggers an old internal alarm. You may feel overwhelmed by expectations that are actually reasonable. You may feel pressure to perform emotionally. You may feel responsible for your partner's feelings in a way that exhausts you. If as a child you were emotionally parentified, meaning you had to manage or anticipate the emotions of caregivers, intimacy now feels like work. So you retreat. Your partner may interpret this as lack of love, while internally you are simply trying to regulate yourself. Conflict becomes particularly challenging. During arguments, you may freeze, dissociate, or go silent. Words disappear. Thoughts become foggy. Your body wants out. This is not emotional immaturity. It is a nervous system response. If conflict in childhood led to chaos, abandonment, or emotional overwhelm, your system learned that staying engaged is dangerous. So it shuts down. Breakups often bring this pattern into sharp focus. You may feel intense grief after a breakup, but also a strange sense of relief. The anxiety quiets. The emotional pressure lifts. You feel more grounded being alone. This can be deeply confusing. You may ask yourself why you miss someone you felt suffocated by. Or why you feel calmer after losing someone you loved. The answer is that being alone restores control. Control over emotional exposure. Control over pace. Control over needs. But control is not the same as safety. Many people with this pattern find themselves cycling through relationships that never fully satisfy them. Either the relationships are too distant to feel nourishing, or too close to feel comfortable. So they live in the middle ground. Not fully alone, but not fully connected. Over time, this can create a deep sense of loneliness, even when surrounded by people. You may feel unseen. You may feel emotionally misunderstood. You may feel like no one truly knows you. But the truth is that parts of you have remained hidden, even from yourself. From a Jungian perspective, the part of you that longs for closeness may live in the shadow. It was suppressed early on because it felt unsafe to express. So you learned to identify with self-sufficiency instead. You became the one who doesn't need much. The one who handles things alone. The one who stays composed. But the shadow always seeks expression. It emerges as longing, restlessness, or dissatisfaction. It emerges as attraction to emotionally charged situations. It emerges as a sense that something is missing. Healing this pattern does not mean forcing yourself to be more open or pushing through discomfort. It means learning to stay present when closeness activates fear. It means noticing the urge to pull away and asking what part of you feels threatened. Often, that part is very young. It remembers moments when love meant unpredictability. When closeness meant emotional overload. When being seen meant being criticized or controlled. Your adult mind may know that your partner is safe, but your body remembers something else. The work is to bridge that gap. In dating, this may mean allowing yourself to stay when things feel calm instead of chasing intensity. It may mean giving consistent people more time before deciding they are boring. It may mean noticing when you interpret stability as lack of passion. In relationships, it may mean learning to communicate your need for space without disappearing. Learning that boundaries do not require emotional withdrawal. Learning that closeness does not erase individuality. After breakups, healing may involve examining what part of you felt relieved and what part felt abandoned. Both parts deserve attention. One wants safety. The other wants connection. Neither is wrong. Integration happens when you stop choosing one at the expense of the other. As this integration unfolds, something important changes. Love stops feeling like a threat to your autonomy. It stops feeling like emotional captivity. Instead, it becomes a shared space you can enter and leave without fear. You no longer choose between independence and intimacy. You begin to experience connection without losing yourself. And slowly, being alone stops being the only place where you feel safe. It becomes a choice, not a necessity. That is when love no longer feels dangerous, and solitude no longer feels like protection, but like one of many ways of being with yourself. And from that place, relationships begin to change, not because you found different people, but because you are no longer trying to survive inside them.
If this message resonated with you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe for more gentle reminders of your inner power.